Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Kane Audio Vlog. It is time for another Ask Me Anything. We are on number 6. If you haven't seen any of the others, then by all means go back and take a look at them. However, if you're up to date with them, then you will know to comment on this video and I'll answer it in the next one. So looking at last week's videos, here are the questions. Meds. Hi Dom, thank you very much for answering my questions. Here is another one. Do you create graphic design for your music, or it's Mau5trap that does it all? For example, your latest EP. It's Mau5trap that did it for the EP, or they used another company, I should say. But they organised all of that for me. I am rubbish at graphic design. My brain decided to go with audio, so my ears are good, my eyes suck. So yeah, graphic design is not my thing. So yeah, I'd rather other people do. However, Mau5trap asked me, what do you want to go with, what have you got, any ideas, blah blah blah. So I came up with the idea of the macro shot. What I wanted, and what I remember explaining, was that the brief I sort of gave was that the EP was called Structures, and it was based on structures, whether they be tangible or intangible, like human relationships to molecular structures. And so I wanted a super zoomed in macro shot of a snowflake that was unique in various ways, and I wanted it somewhat like, if you remember, the We Are Friends Volume 5 was Smoke Effect number 5, and I really liked that. So I said, whoever did that, I want to do this snowflake effect graphic, and I want it to be that sort of attitude and vibe, which is exactly what I got, and they did a great job. So cheers for that. Donny Carr, hello Dom, do you remember your first big aha moment as a producer, when something just clicked that took your music to the next level? I want to say yes, but I think the reality is you have lots of little aha moments, and I think that's probably true for most producers. You know, even when you have some fairly successful records, you know, things don't happen overnight necessarily. You know, even if you got randomly a Beatport number 1, you know, you've still kind of worked on that for a long time. You've toiled and troubled, and you probably weren't expecting that track to go to number 1, and you may have already worked with 10-15 other labels, so whichever one that one's with doesn't quite seem like a big moment. And I think musically it's very similar, in that, you know, when you're producing, you sort of learn. I think we all have aha moments every few months or years or whatever. Admittedly, they're sort of less and less as you grow, but I don't think there was any one single aha moment for me. I think it's more a series of, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'd learnt to balance the kicks and bass better at one point, and then maybe another point I'd learnt to put together better percussion sound, or I don't know. Yeah, there wasn't just one anyway. It's just lots of little things that build up over time. Jake Boyce, hey Dom, thanks for answering my questions about acoustic treatment. One of your suggestions was to have someone mix and master my tracks, which I've always shied away from, since I really would like to get good at that myself. But I'm starting to like the idea of having someone mix and master my stuff, until I have the means to do it myself in a properly treated room. Yeah, I mean, look, you know, I would love to be able to play piano, violin, trumpet, everything, and develop my own orchestra. You know, I'd love to mix and master and post-produce and do everything from scratch, but you know, that's not really how it works. You know, if you look at a band, and I've used this example before, if you put a band together, you'd have your singer, your lead guitarist, your bass guitarist, your drummer, whatever. You wouldn't expect them to also be mastering engineers and mix engineers and recorders and whatever else, you know. So I don't see why it would ever be any different in electronic music. And you know, even though I do mastering myself and mix engineering, as you've seen on this, so if people want to get in touch with me and have their track mixed or mastered or both, then by all means get in touch. But even I've had some of my tracks for Mau5trap mastered by someone else, because there might be a track where I'm just being too fussy on it myself, because I wrote it, I know what the track should sound like, and there's something just not sitting right with me sometimes, where I'll be sat on my own mix, because when I've written every bit in my head, I'm not happy with the mix, or something's not sitting right. And sometimes it's nice to just send it to another mix engineer or another mastering engineer and get their take on it. And then I might not like the result, but I'm willing to try that, because sometimes you just get stuck on something and you're not sure what it is, and you're so involved in your own music that sometimes you need to kind of step back and let someone else do a bit first. And vice versa, I do the same for other artists. You know, there are a few guys I know who are great mix engineers and mastering engineers, but they've sent me tracks going, can you mix this one, because I'm just not, my head's not in the right space or whatever. So yeah, so that's that. It is definitely something worth considering, especially as you said about your room not being treated. Well, if you're in an untreated room, then you would be very lucky to get a perfect mix or master, because every room has its characteristics, and unless you learn those inside out and are able to compensate for every single one, then it'll never be truly perfect. One of my worries about this, though, is that I was under the impression that Mau5trap, probably the only label I'd consider signing with for the same reasons you went with them, only signs, read more, artists that mix and master their own stuff. Is that true to this day, or am I completely misinformed? Completely misinformed. Mau5trap couldn't care less whether you mix and master your own work. In fact, the hell was that? Yeah, by the way, there is a road, sort of a building down, and every now and then you get a massive lorry going past, and that one vibrated the whole building. What was I saying? Right, yeah, Mau5trap, with mixed and mastering, I mean, they have their own guy, Dean, who, shout out to Dean, does their mastering, so yeah, that's just not a thing. And to be honest, if there was a record label that refused to sign one of my tracks based on the fact that I hadn't mixed and or mastered it myself, then I'd tell that label to go fuck themselves, because that's just stupid. So yeah, if you know any labels that don't accept anything like that, then tell them to go fuck themselves, because that's just retarded. Again, like I said about the bands, you know, you'd never expect a whole band to mix and master their own stuff. So why should any other producer or artist? Suresh Madhawana again. Hey, thank you very much, Tom, for answering my questions. This is some of the best advice I've gotten, and please keep doing these. I like the long video as well. Cool, that's good to know, because I kind of feel like people, I don't even look at the stats of the videos, to be honest, so I have no idea how long people look at these videos. Could be 20 seconds, could be 20 minutes, but either way, I'm still talking. Yeah, so that's good to know if you're okay with the long videos. Hans Ford, hey Dom, these vlogs are great, and I would for sure buy a shirt and or a hat. My question is more out of interest, so let's start with that. Oh, yeah, I mentioned merch, didn't I? Cool, so shirt and hat, duly noted. What artist or album made you realise you wanted to make electronic music for a living? Keep up the great work, cheers from Canada. Don't know. For me, music was not just a passion, it was an obsession from, well, birth. Apparently my sisters used to test me when I was 4 years old on bits of classical music, like the name of the composer or the concerto or whatever, and I would apparently be able to answer that. You know, some of my first memories are having a cassette of Brandenburg's concerto and listening to that on repeat, which is kind of weird for a kid now I think about it, and dragging my mum upstairs on her stereo as well. It was her cassette on her stereo, and I would drag my mum upstairs and force her to listen to a certain crescendo in the music, and I had to show people. I mean, my family must have been hating me as a kid. I must have been a nightmare, but clearly an obsessive nightmare. Yes, I used to drag my family into and force them to listen to certain bits of music or whatever, because it was a burning sensation inside me that I had to show people certain bits of music, because the way they made me feel, I wanted other people to feel that as well. And that's admittedly is perhaps a bit more mature and a bit more calm now, but it never really went away. That's kind of what got me into music production. I do, however, remember age 8 or 9, so we're talking mid-80s, and hearing for the first time ever what would be considered as a proper synthesizer noise. I can't remember the name of the trap, but it was some sort of Hoover, so late 80s, early acid house rave stuff. And I remember hearing that noise, and up until that age I always liked classical music, or I'd only heard classical music other than a bit of pop on the radio. My dad was a jazz musician, my mum was always into anything from opera to classical to punk, you name it. So I'd never really heard synthesizers until that point, and I remember hearing that, what we now know as a Hoover preset, and I remember hearing that going, what the hell is this noise? And it blew my mind, because I couldn't work it out. It wasn't a trumpet, it wasn't a piano, it wasn't a violin, it wasn't all of these things I knew as an 8-year-old boy, and I couldn't work out what instrument made that noise, and that was kind of the start of my desire to get into the music industry. So back to the original question, artist or album made you realise you wanted to make electronic music for a living? Don't know. Everything, I suppose. It was just, I knew I wanted, I have never had a moment in my life, other than age 3, apparently I wanted to be a garbage man. Other than that, I don't think I've ever had any desire to be anything other than musician. So yeah. Zombo, what should a producer learn in music theory? I am bad at them. Also, sorry for my broken ass English. I try my best, thanks. English works for me. Music theory is kind of a weird one. It is important. It is definitely important. I'm not great at music theory, but there are a few. I think there's a couple of books that are definitely worth reading. There's one, The Idiot's Guide to Composition. That one's well worth reading. Otherwise, general sort of music theory 101, but you will find it a bit frustrating. But it's kind of worth persevering, and it's worth just doing it over and over again. Because I found that when I first started producing music, I knew basic scales and whatever, and maybe a few intervals, and I was okay, but I didn't really know what should work and what shouldn't work. And I guess that's the important bit, is so you don't really know. Everything is a trial and error, and everything is kind of an experiment. Whereas when you start to learn music theory, you start to develop an idea of what should work and what shouldn't work, and then it's only then that you start to maybe improve efficiency in production, you become a more efficient producer. And then it's only after you've really started to grasp and master those, which for me was years later, that I started to be able to go, okay, I'm going to try this because it shouldn't work. And it's only once you've learnt the rules you can learn to break the rules, I guess is the point. So for example, I've been working on a track recently, this week, could be last week, and I've purposefully dipped outside of the scale because it's I think it dips off into what's called a Pythagorean format, so it sort of dips outside of what we call a sort of a normal natural scale, but it works because it the end of the phrase resolves where it should resolve as it starts the new phrase. So it gets there in the end, but it makes it that sort of sustained tension, I suppose. And things like that you'd maybe only come across by mistake without knowing music theory. So what should a producer learn in music theory? A bit of everything, I suppose. Definitely read a few books. Definitely learn the essential scales and what should work and what shouldn't work, and things like resolve and how to resolve and basic chord phrases, you know. But the more you learn, the more you learn to break those rules. So yeah. Andy Ruiz, hey Dom, thanks for answering my questions. I would most definitely like t-shirts and or some socks. Socks are good. I live in Arizona, so I can't wear hoodies. Fair point. I will always have questions, so here they are. What's your favourite colour and why? I really like yellow. Okay, I don't think I have a favourite colour. Kind of tying in what I was talking about earlier on about the graphic design, my eyes don't see things. So if, for example, a girlfriend says, would my hair look good blonde? I don't know, you're not blonde, so I can't visualise that. So when it comes to things like favourite colours, I don't. In fact, Alfa Romeo Competition Red, so the 8C Red, yeah, I would say 8C Red by Alfa Romeo. That's a great colour on a car. So yeah, that's my favourite colour. Do you believe that there is music that is legitimately garbage, or everyone has their own opinion, so no? I'm torn between the two because, for example, a lot of that copy-paste EDM mainstream stuff has no passion or even real talent behind it. It's just a bunch of vultures trying to jump into the scene to make some money making mediocre music. What do you think about that, or do you disagree? I wouldn't say music is legitimately garbage, because all kinds of music have a place in life. Whether that be elevator music in an elevator or whatever. So I kind of understand that the EDM kids love the primary colours and loud noises and that sort of roller coaster theme park style build up, breakdown, build up, breakdown, build up, breakdown, drop. You know, that's, if that's your thing and it makes you happy, that's great for you. It's not my thing. I don't find any value in it. But then again, I don't think I should find value in a night out in a club. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn. From a producer aspect and from a general nerd aspect, you know, it's stupid copy paste shit. Why would anyone want to do that? Even if somebody offered me, you know, crazy money to do copy paste EDM, of course I would take the first couple of opportunities and get some money, because hey, money's money. But I couldn't do it for any prolonged period of time, because if money was that important to me, I wouldn't be a musician. I'd be a banker or something. I don't know. So yeah, so I think maybe that answers your question. I think the music industry has probably 30%, if we're lucky, 30% creative people who genuinely have a passion for music and production and audio and education and learning and whatever. And I would say the other 70% are fighting each other for the top position, which is owned by the 1% who are mostly cash cows. So there we go. It is what it is. Are you much of a drinker? I'm turning 21 on the 14th of May, so I'm just making a list of what beers or alcohol to try now that I can be legally adventurous. Sorry, that was a long comment. I'm not much of a drinker. I used to be. In Britain here, we can legally drink from age 18, so I know it's different for you guys at 21. That baffles me, being 21. You guys can own guns, drive cars, so two of the most lethal weapons going, but you can't have a beer. Seems bizarre. And while you're at university as well. That's bizarre. But happy birthday for 14th of May. A few days yet. However, I do like a good ale. In fact, Moog, I don't know if they still do an ale, but they did do an ale. Definitely worth checking that out. Other than that, I'm probably not much help. I quite like Old Speckled Hen. But I kind of like a few light beers as well, like Brahma. Coors Light, I suppose, is all right. But then, like I say, I'm not much of a drinker. I drink maybe twice a year. It's not my thing anymore. I'm too old. Who's next? Nathan Zaskarinskis. Thanks for answering my question, Dom. I've got one follow-up and a sort of related one. What semi-modular gear are you looking at getting? I'm currently looking at getting the Moog Mother 32. I'm just debating whether or not to buy it new or second-hand, which leads into my second question. What are your thoughts on second-hand gear? Also, just go for Nathan. My surname is a nightmare to pronounce. Haha, probably should have started with that. Yeah, I just said your surname, I hope. And no, I'd rather pronounce it. I'm British, not American. I know American people won't even try pronouncing people's names. If it's vaguely un-American, they won't even give it a go. And I know that from UFC, listening to those commentators like J-Check, which is nothing like whatever her real name is. Semi-modular gear, Mother 32, great choice. That's actually what I'm considering as well. I'm just trying to weigh up whether it's actually going to add much value to my existing setup, because let's face it, oscillators, filters are going to be essentially the same. So it's really about whether it's not even whether it's the right gear, I suppose. It's more whether I'm the right person and have the right mindset to be using that gear. And then the second reason I'm only just contemplating it is, well, partly cost, but partly I know that once you go down the modular route, you open up a black hole. So to go semi-modular, you're kind of sitting on the edge, dangling your feet in a black hole. As for buying second-hand gear, yeah, some of my gear I've bought second-hand. Some of my gear I've bought brand new because I've been fortunate enough to be able to afford it brand new. And there are certain things like the event opals, for example. They, at the time, were big money for monitors, I would say. They were upper end of mid-budget stuff. So I chose to buy those brand new, even though they were at the upper bracket. I chose to buy them brand new because they were relatively new monitors to everyone at the time. So I wanted the warranties. So, for example, if you were buying some Yamahas, NS10s before they got discontinued, then you'd be all right with buying those secondhand because you knew there were loads of spares online and they weren't crazy expensive, and you knew that they were rock solid because the production line had proven itself to be a rock solid product. Something like a Moog synthesizer, personally I can vouch for the build quality being bar none. Basically they are by far the best built synthesizers I've probably ever used, certainly in the non-modular area. So buying a Moog secondhand, so long as it hasn't been abused, and toured on stage and not cased properly or whatever the issue is, then yeah, I would say if it's budget related, there's nothing wrong with buying it secondhand. You're probably better off buying it secondhand, unless you're desperate for that warranty. So that's my thoughts on that. Rain. Hey Dom, I guess you don't DJ as much as you used to, but when you did, how did you find it? As in dealing with delayed flights and dealing with the stress and all that comes with it. And if I'm not wrong, most artists are predisposed to at least some anxiety. I guess this is kind of a relevant question in the wake of Avicii's death. I posted this in the AMA3 comments when I should have posted it in AMA4 comments, so it didn't get answered. Dealing with delayed flights, I don't think it was too much of an issue, really. I think I mean, I was probably the right age. I was 21, 22, 23, up to 26, 27 when I was touring a lot. So I think I was fairly young, fit and healthy. I was a bit of a party animal at the beginning. And after a couple of years of that, luckily I don't have any predispositions to addiction, which I think is something people need to be very careful of in this world, because obviously drink and drugs are everywhere. It's pointless pretending it isn't, especially when you're a touring DJ. It's there right in front of you, night in, night out, and I think that's easily, if you're easily tempted and you have a predisposition to addiction, then that can be quite a slippery slope. I know quite a few big name DJs, or at least many that were big name DJs, that aren't now because of things like alcoholism and drugs, and they don't help with dealing with delayed flights. So yeah, I had quite a few journeys back. I remember one from Belarus, for example. I had to go from Belarus, it was a New Year's Eve in Minsk, and I had to go from Belarus to Moscow, and Moscow, I think I had to stop in Kiev maybe for another gig, I can't remember, and then from Kiev to London. So the journey back, it was a long weekend, and I got wasted at the gig after my set. I got stupidly drunk on what was the president or prime minister of Ukraine's personal stash of whiskey, because it was in an ice rink and he had his own VIP room. He wasn't there that night, obviously, but he was there for the ice hockey or whatever, so he had his own suite, and we grabbed some of his whiskey. Anyway, needless to say, I got shit-faced and had the mother of all hangovers the next day, and had to catch all these flights and sit in these airports, and I was just dying on my feet. And I remember thinking then, this is stupid. Why would I do this? So yeah, so I had to knock that on the head, which is why I'm now, whoever your question was earlier on about am I much of a drinker, that's one of the reasons. No, because I don't enjoy the repercussions. Well, we've hit the 30-minute mark, so yeah. So I was saying, yeah, I don't really have too many predispositions in anxiety, not in travelling situations. I know the first couple of tours I went on, I was a bit, rabbit in headlights, but I think anyone is, aren't they? You know, first day on any job. So yeah, I wouldn't say most artists are predisposed to at least some anxiety, no more than most people, to be honest. And I guess this is kind of relevant question in the wake of Avicii's death, very much so. And like I said in the last video, it's very much something we should all be talking about on a regular basis. We should all, as musicians and as at least myself as men, you know, men are known to be shit at talking about emotions, and musicians are shit at talking about emotions, especially when we're supposed to be having the time of our lives every night of the week, and we're supposed to be happy and smiling on Instagram every day, or whatever it is we're supposed to be doing. I don't, as you can probably tell, I'm not one of them. So yeah, I think we should all definitely be very much aware of stuff like that. And I think also, you know, I kind of feel sorry for some of these DJs who clearly are just having a bit of a shit time, and they get bad-mouthed on the internet for not being nice enough to their fans or whatever. And I think, you know, sometimes these guys have been through some shit. You know, they might have been travelling 36 hours to get to whatever that destination is. I've had plenty of gigs, and I'm not at global level, but I've had plenty of gigs where, you know, it's taken me 24, 36 hours to get to the gig, you know, and because of the timings of the flights or the spreading of the airports, the hotels or whatever, you know, you can be running on sort of maybe 2 hours sleep in 2 days. So I think you have to forgive some of them for being a bit grouchy. Personally, I was lucky where I learnt to be able to sleep sitting down. I could literally just sit in an airport on those terrible metal benches, and I could fall asleep right there and then. And whenever I got on a bus, a train, an aeroplane, the moment I sat down, boom, sleep. So I've been quite lucky that I could sort of induce my own narcolepsy. So yeah, wasn't really a bother for me, but I know a lot of other people do really struggle with that. So yeah, there we go. And last question, Casey Music. Hey Dom, thanks for again for answering. No more questions about compression. I have kind of an awkward question for you. I was working on a track of mine when I saw that you uploaded the video. While watching your answer to the transition question, I thought your voice would do a great job as a vocal in my track, since it's all about transitioning and, more importantly, not transitioning. Would you allow me to do that? I guess it depends on what I'm saying and the context. Send me the track. Send me the track. Find me. My fan page on Facebook is probably the best way to message me, or yeah, Instagram messages I don't check. Unfortunately, Instagram, I've had too many weirdos message me on that, so I don't tend to bother, because it's like 90% weirdos and 10% normal people. So yeah, so but yeah, Facebook fan page or whatever, send me the track, let me have a listen. I don't really see myself having a problem with that. So there we go. And actually, on that note, this is the last thing I'm going to mention now. I've had quite a few people, more than normal I should say, approach me this week asking for my critique on their music. And this is something that I know lots of producers in a certain field or status or whatever have. A lot of people asking for feedback on their tracks. This is something I'd love to... Christ, what is that? There's clearly there's big building work or something going on outside today, and it's shaking the whole building. I don't know if you can hear it. I think normally you can hear it on the microphone, so yeah. Right, yeah, so people ask for feedback on their tracks. Whilst I would love to be able to, the amount of people that do ask for feedback on their tracks, it would be a full-time job and I'd never earn a penny. However, I have signed up to audiu.net, which is AUDIU, audiu.net, I think. And you can find me on there. Basically, the way the site works, it works for me and it works for others, so it's great, I think. So you sign up as an artist, you upload your track, and you choose a professional to have your track critiqued, and you pay, I don't even know what it is off the top of my head, I think it's like £20-30. I think some people charge different amounts, but something like that. And for that, you get a professional, of which I am one of, to sit down and properly listen to your track and give proper constructive feedback. And I found this was the only way I could do it. Was, first of all, I can kind of justify it when it's officially done, and second of all, the way the website works is great for me because it forces you to fill in certain comment boxes, basically. So you've got first impressions, strongest point, weakest point, completeness and credibility, mix down, arrangement and flow, sound choices, and suggested strategy. So it means under each one of these headings I can go, right, I'll listen to the mix down and I'll give my feedback, and I might be saying things like, you know, these kicks need to come down by 2 dB, or I think you should sidechain this against this, or I think you should maybe think about filtering this bit or this bit, and it allows me to really sort of focus on giving constructive feedback on tracks. So if that is something you want to do, or have me do, or have someone else do, then head to audiu.net, AUDIU, I think. So yeah, there's that, and that's that. So yeah, once again, thanks for all your questions. We're now running up to nearly 40 minutes, so apologies, it's been a long video. Hey, no, I'm not apologising, because chances are if you didn't enjoy it, then you're long gone anyway. If you have made it to the end of this video, then huge thumbs up to you. Yeah, I'll see you next week. Cheers.